So welcome to my Q&A celebrating getting to 300,000 subscribers. Now to mark this milestone, Vidami are actually giving away 3 of their amazing YouTube looper pedals, which are brilliant tools for transcribing and practicing music, because they allow you to slow down and loop YouTube videos all with your foot. Stick around to the end to find out how to enter the giveaway. So our first question is, what is your take on the idea that mainstream music is becoming simpler and less creative as time passes? So it's a common point of view that I actually see in the comments of my videos quite often, that pop music today is less sophisticated and less complex than pop music, say, 40 or 50 years ago. And without doing any in-depth research, I can see where these views are coming from. Because if you think pop music historically, let's say in the 60s or 70s, would often feature key changes or perhaps time signature changes. They would feature a lot of chords from outside of the key perhaps, or have longer and more elaborate structures. And generally speaking, I do agree that pop music today probably is simpler than pop music was historically. But I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. The thing is, a lot of styles of music are simple in their nature, right? If you think about folk music or country music or even rock and roll from the 50s, it would often rely on 3 or 4 chords. And no one's really picking holes in that music for being so simple. I think what's really going on here is when people compare today's pop music with historical pop music, they're not comparing it fairly. They're comparing whatever happened to come out this week with some of the finest songs of the last 50 years. If you actually went week by week through the charts of the 70s or the 80s, you'd probably find just as much rubbish as you do in today's charts. With any era of music, as time passes, the less good music gets forgotten about, doesn't get played on the radio, doesn't get playlisted on Spotify. So naturally, when you look at music from the 70s, for example, you're going to see hit after hit. But when you look at the music that came out last week, it's not had a chance yet to be filtered out. The classics haven't emerged yet. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. This comes from Jack Vow, and he asks, what makes the flat 6, flat 7, 8 ending so amazing and dramatic in music? So the ending that's being talked about here is sometimes referred to as the Super Mario ending. And I've also heard it referred to as the Billy Shears ending. So I think there's really 2 elements giving this ending its bold, powerful sound. The first of which is the fact that it's 3 major chords in a row. So all 3 notes of the chord are moving together the exact same distance each time, which I think gives the notes a sense of unity as they move along to the next chord. But the other element which I think gives this ending its grand sound is that it's effectively a pickety third. These 2 chords, the flat 6 and flat 7, are borrowed from the minor scale. This is modal interchange. So usually when we hear the flat 6 and flat 7, they would resolve onto the minor 1 chord like this. But a pickety third, which I've discussed before, is when a passage in the minor key resolves instead to the major chord. And that's what's happening here, right? And it results in a brighter, more resolved sounding ending than it would if it had gone to the minor chord. VC asks, what were the first artists you listened to? So when I was 13, I got my first ever MP3 player. And literally all I had on the MP3 player for about 2 years was the entire back catalogue of the Beatles and the back catalogues of each Beatles solo career. But then eventually I did discover that there is more music than the Beatles. And I slowly sort of ventured out from there into everything I know and love today. And that's not to say that I wasn't aware of other artists, but I basically spent all of my time listening to the Beatles. Ben Jansen asks, how old are you, and is your last name actually Piano? So this question comes up quite a lot, and maybe I'll actually finally answer it. So I'm years old, and yes, my surname is Piano. Eagle LT asks, in your opinion, how important is music education to create, write music or become a musician? Or is it better to choose another career and only sing and play as a side job? So you don't need a formal education in music to be a working musician, but it can be really, really helpful. And the sort of things it's helpful with can vary. So for example, you might find that what's most helpful about going to a music college is meeting loads of other musicians, building a network of potential collaborators. Because in music, it's all about who you know. You want to have people around you who you can work with, who might hire you, that you might hire them. And you can learn a lot from your peers at music school as well. But of course, on top of that, there's the actual skills that you'll be learning and practicing when you're at college, which will just make you a better musician. I don't think anyone's ever regretted learning more about the thing they love. So there's not really anything to be lost by going to music college, apart from the tuition fee. But like I said, you don't have to go to music college to be a musician. And you also don't have to be a full-time working musician. Like you mentioned in your comment, you can just do music as a side job or as a hobby. And this can have major advantages, right? Because, for example, most obviously, music is quite hard to make money in. So if you can have a more sustainable income source and do music on the side, music will probably be more enjoyable and less stressful than something that you depend on to make money. But the other thing is, I've been working as a full-time musician for 6 years. And there comes a point when you're working on music 5, 6, 7 days a week, 40 hours, 50 hours in a week, and it starts to drag. It starts to lose its novelty. And, music's meant to be something that you're passionate about, that you love doing. And when it starts to get boring, that can be really disheartening. So if you just do music on the side, at least it remains something really special to you. Okay, Ben Priest asks a couple things here. First of all, he says, what is your proudest accomplishment? Well, I'd say my proudest musical accomplishment is probably my residency I had at the Casino de Monte Carlo in Monaco a couple of years ago. Basically, for a few weekends in the summer of 2018, I was flown out to Monaco and would play each evening in the casino and spend the day exploring Monaco and France, which was just like amazing. It was like a dream gig. So that's probably my proudest achievement in music. And your other question was, do you write your own music and is there a way to access it? Well, I very much appreciate you bringing this up because literally this week I finally put my music onto Spotify. So not only do I have the pieces of music that I play in the videos on Spotify now, like my exclusively pentatonic song or my exclusively melodic minor song, but the main thing that I've put up on Spotify is my EP, which I've spent this year writing. It's called The Longest March, and here's a few samples of what it sounds like. If you want to have a listen to the EP in full, I've linked it down below in the description. So here's a question from one of my Patreons. Philip Sharp asks, I'd like to know the people whose singing voices you most admire or envy. So the two voices that come to mind are probably Rufus Wainwright. With Rufus, I think it's the pureness and power of his voice, which I really love. And the other voice that came to mind was Father John Misty, who, with Father John Misty, it's more about the expression and the emotion in his voice, which I really love.
Comedy. Now that's what I call pure comedy.
Alan Key 86 asks, when you arranged Frère Jacques in 7/4, did you experience the amazing emotional response that many other people have had listening to it? So in case you don't know what that's referring to, for a collaboration I did with a bunch of music theory YouTubers, I had to put together a version of Frère Jacques in 7/4 time. And a lot of people have actually had a really positive reaction to this and said they found it really emotional and inspiring, which you can kind of see from the reaction it had in the collaboration.
This is my monastery, and I'm gonna ring that bell.
We're gonna get the whole stadium singing this in a minute.
It's going on a journey. Where are we going?
After me,
Frère Jacques. This was a very pleasant surprise for me because I was in two minds about this arrangement. I felt like it was quite epic and emotional, maybe, you know, less sort of jazzy than stuff I usually write, but it went down really well. So I'm really chuffed with that, and a lot of people have actually been asking if it's available on Spotify, which it is, so I'll link that below as well. Okay, Alex asks, as a piano player, do you think keyboards would be able to replace guitar in a rock trio? I love Emerson, Lake and Palmer and they pull it off great, but they seem like the only ones who have done it. So yeah, you do occasionally get bands who put a piano or a keyboard in the place where a guitar would normally be in rock music. Emerson, Lake and Palmer are a great example, although occasionally they did actually have guitars. Another great example is the Ben Folds 5. But even in Ben Folds 5, they'll often put the bass through a fuzz pedal, making it sound more like a guitar. And another example I can think of is probably Keen. Although with Keen, I think you'd have to call them soft rock. I don't think you could refer to Keen as, you know, rock and roll. And that's the thing, is that genres like rock are subjective and, you know, flexible. So really, there is no way of saying if this music is still rock music. But to me, you know, the moment you take a guitar out of a rock band, it stops sounding as much like rock music. It's just the guitar, particularly the distorted guitar, is a central part of what makes rock music rock music. But yeah, you know, we don't have to stick to genres. Mix genres however you like. If you want to swap the guitar out for keyboards, then go for it. Daniel asks, is there one genre or style of music which you just can't stand? So I wouldn't say there's one style of music which I don't like or don't like listening to. I think most styles of music you can find something of value in there. One style though which I find a bit fickle, you know, is quite hit and miss for me, is modern hip-hop music. Even in one artist, I will find tracks that I love and tracks that really don't do anything for me. Like Kendrick Lamar, for example, like To Pimp a Butterfly, I love that album, but Damn, I really don't like. And a similar artist is Kanye West. Like, he's got a few songs that I like, but in general, I just don't really see the appeal there. I don't see why people like his music. The Pyro PM asks, what are some of your favourite artists' bands outside of the mainstream? So the first one that comes to mind are Penelope Isles. Penelope Isles aren't necessarily not mainstream, but they're sort of still breaking through into the mainstream. But another artist I'd say you should check out is Julie Fowlis, who is a Scottish Gaelic singer. And not only does she do lots of traditional Gaelic songs, but she sometimes does Gaelic versions of well-known pop songs. For example, Blackbird by the Beatles. And one more artist you should check out is a guy called Sowoto Kinch, who is a British jazz and hip-hop artist. Sowoto Kinch's album, The Legend of Mike Smith, is genuinely like 1/3 jazz, 1/3 hip-hop, 1/3 audiobook. It's an amazing concept album, so just check that out if you have a chance.
Photo shoots, posters and promotions, doing shows for free, how much exposure I'm supposed to need.
So, like I mentioned at the beginning, Vidami are very kindly giving away 3 of their amazing YouTube looper pedals to viewers of this video. So if you're interested in getting your hands on one of these, all you have to do is follow the link in the description and sign up to their newsletter, and then you'll be entered automatically into the prize draw, which will be drawn a week from upload. So if you're watching this a week after upload, you may have missed the deadline. But this pedal is genuinely an amazing tool for learning and practicing music. I showed it in one of my previous videos, and you know, I wasn't lying when I was saying it was helpful. Not only can you change the playback speed of the music you're listening to help you practice along and transcribe it, but you can also loop sections, which I think is an amazing function. The amount of times where there's just that one troublesome section of the song where you have to keep rewinding it to try and work out what's going on, this absolutely fixes that problem because it enables you to loop the section and it enables you on top of that to slow it down so you can really hear what's going on. And thank you as always to everybody who supports me on Patreon, including the names you see on screen right now, and Abigail Allen, Andre Sainz Diaja, Andrew Brown, Austin Barrett, Austin Russell, Bob McKinstry, Brittany Parker, Cameron Orlavela, Chris Cabell, Christopher Ryan, David Lee Fish, David Rivers, Donald Howard, Dr. Darren Wicks, Eleanor Skorchenko, Esben Hansen, Eugene Leroy, Eyes, FD Hodor, Guillermo Latona, James Ko, Jake Okensparger, Joe Watson, Jonas Soderstrom, Justin Vigor, Lavender Mint Rose, Mark Height, Melody Composer Squared, Michael Vivian, Nancy Gillard, Nathan Lawrence, Paul Miller, Will Hazel, Peter Dunphy, Piotr Chmielowski, Roger Clay, Sam Lynn, Scott Fenley, Sean Kennedy, Steve Daly, Stephen Lazaro, Tim Beaker, Trisha Adams, Tim Payne, Toot, Victor Levy, Vidad Flowers, Vladimir Kodakov, and Volti.